Hey everyone, it's Gene Calderon here with Gene Calderon Apologetics Ministries, sharing another teaching time video with theme days that we have going on. And today being Sunday, we are going to focus again back on Sunday science. We get to look at all the scientific discoveries, whether recent or past, and see whether or not it actually supports the biblical worldview or a secular worldview or somewhere in between. Where are we at with that? And I wanted to bring up a topic about a researcher from the University of Iowa who discovered a strain of bacteria called Pseudomonas butida CBB5, and it's a strain of bacteria that seems to have evolved with the ability to be able to live off caffeine. I mean, I think many of us could probably relate, right? But discoveries like this seem to convince many that biological evolution must be a fact. After all, seeing is believing. We're talking about science. We're talking about science and observation and repetition, and we are observing what some people would call evolution happening right before our eyes. Still, we have to have a careful understanding of the different meanings of that term evolution. That's where it takes a lot of people off track, whether we are talking for or against a biblical worldview or for or against a scientific understanding. So what does that term evolution mean? And how can we look at it to be able to realize that it does take on a variety of different meanings? Each one is going to reflect a different type of biological transformation or an assumed transformation. So we have to take time to be able to look at something like that. For instance, the first one we'll talk about is microevolution. And microevolution is the variation of traits within a population. In other words, it is still the same creature or organism that it is, but we will see some changes or some variations in something like that, such as the peppered moth is known to be able to be a representation of what we call microevolution. The second one is something we know as speciation. That is where one species can produce closely related sister species. And for that, we can remember the famous Galapagos finches of Darwin. We can see that in his books. We see pictures of that. And then there's microbial evolution. That is where evolution of bacteria, viruses, or other single-celled eukaryotic organisms are involved. And that is, we have a large population of pretty simple single-celled organisms that will reproduce, and we can see some changes within those large populations of single-celled eukaryotic organisms. And then there is what we call chemical evolution, and that's the idea that life can come from non-life through a series of chemical evolutionary steps where molecules will eventually give way to the complex organisms that we see today. And then lastly, there is macroevolution, where evolution has creative power. For example, an ape-like creature evolving into a human being. Now, evolutionary biologists and most creationists will come to an agreement that there is plenty of evidence. There's a lot of good evidence for the existence of microevolution, for speciation, and for microbial evolution. But the problems that come up are usually around the ideas of chemical evolution, that life can come from non-life, or from macroevolution, or the idea that one particular organism can evolve into a new, completely different kind of organism if given enough time. Now, evolutionary biologists argue that over long periods of time that the minor changes can lead to major transformations, like birds having come from dinosaurs. But the problem is that there's really no solid evidence that have been discovered to be able to support those ideas. Those are only speculations or theories. And as rational as those theories may seem, we still have not found good supporting evidence for those ideas. So creationists and some intelligent design supporters argue that organisms cannot evolve in those kinds of dramatic ways. Or in other words, a creator must be responsible for life's origin, and that biological and biochemical systems must be intelligently designed. And that's what we're going to take a look at over the next couple of Sunday sciences that we will do. We will look at some of the ideas of evolutions and which one has actually held up some skepticism and which ones have not held up to skepticism, to be able to look at those different ideas and see what do we mean by this word of evolution. I'm hoping this serves you. I am the chapter director for Ratio Christi at Purdue University Northwest. I serve at Freedom Church in East Chicago, Indiana, and I'm also on the board for Lake County Rights to Life. Always doing events around Northwest Indiana. In fact, we have some coming up. I just would invite you to click on some of the links that are below and look us up, and feel free to join us anytime. Also, what do you think about evolution? What is your understanding of evolution? Or is that as soon as you hear that word, you completely cut off the conversation? Or if you hear somebody deny that word of evolution, you completely cut off the conversation with them? I think both of those are wrong. I think we do need to have that conversation, and that's hopefully what we're going to be able to do here. If you're looking to support a local missionary, which I am, again, there's a link down there, looking to serve and support Northwest Indiana with why we believe what we believe with the ministries that I serve in. God bless you, and I hope to hear from you soon. Take care.